building since 2007. Up until this administration, we were allowed to walk in every part of the building. That allowed us to get a sense of the way the Pentagon operated and move about quite freely. In May, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth restricted our ability to move in the building to a few hallways on one floor and the food court. The most recent change is that the department is now requiring us to sign an agreement that could place limits on what we report and how we do it. If we want to cover the Pentagon, in the Pentagon, we have to, according to these rules, write what they want us to say is happening in the United States military. In a town like Washington, so often what you're doing is hearing news. You know, when you're out in the field, you can see it, you can smell it, you can touch it, you can taste it. But the Pentagon offered a really unique experience because you could hear things through the hallway, get a sense of the environment and the tensions or the exuberance. I'll give you a concrete example. The day that the U.S. lost 13 service members in Afghanistan as the U.S. withdrawal was happening, I happened to be in the building, and you could just see the anguish on people's faces as the number of deaths kept growing, both for the U.S. military and for the hundreds of Afghans who were killed in that explosive. And so to understand the impact of the consequences of their decisions and to see it is really illuminating, because I think in that moment you could see it in the building that people felt a sense of responsibility and guilt. It's just something that a phone call can't replace. I have really found that the way you can really understand a story better and get it to a more accurate place is by interacting with the people who are part of that story, and being in the building really allowed us to do that. Because we were there and they could see us there, there was an unspoken message that the Pentagon was relaying to the troops, that they not only defended the First Amendment by wearing uniform and defending the Constitution, but by having us there. And so it invited people to feel like they could tell the military story to help us, the American public, understand it better. Ultimately, we'll know less about what the military is doing, despite the fact that more than 2 million people serve in this all-volunteer force. We'll know less about how much of our money they're spending and how they're spending it. And I think we'll have less accurate reporting ultimately, because we're having fewer avenues to understand and get to information.
Mia, this is your topic. How do you feel about the press being restricted? And the only news outlet to sign the new press access policy was One American News Network, OANN.
Yeah, at first, when I was first reading it, I'm like, this makes sense, restricting people from this area or that area that's secured. And then I kept reading and I'm like, you know what? The rules have always been for the last 65 plus years, they couldn't go in secured areas. They couldn't release classified information. So basically what Pete Hegseth has done hasn't really changed anything. They were never allowed in restricted areas. They were never allowed to have classified information or anything like that. So he hasn't really done much. But what he has done is essentially move out the microscope out from the DoD somewhere else. And I mean, they were throwing out terms where there was an implication of potential charges against some of these journalists for reporting the news, as they should. It's their First Amendment right. And the Supreme Court has found it is their First Amendment right to report the news adequately. And it just seems to me that we are moving towards a state media and not a free press. So for those viewers watching, I just want to list all of the news stations that have been kicked out. So we're talking ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, Washington Post, Reuters, Bloomberg, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, The Guardian, Politico, NPR, The Hill, The Atlantic, News Nation, which is pretty red leaning, and Newsmax, also very red leaning places, the Pentagon Press Association themselves. The Pentagon Press Association themselves is saying that there's something seedy going on here. The Washington Times as well. So it just seems to be that they are on some sort of, war path. So it originally started in January when they took over and they kicked a bunch of people out of the press office. And then those that were remaining in this press office were like, okay, so what's the clarification? What's going on here? They proceeded to kick the rest of them out of this press area for asking questions. And then now there's only 2 people allowed in this press office, which is in and of itself is a little bit on the seedier side. And like, if you have nothing to hide, then why would you not want people in this office? Why would you not want to correspond with them? And then the Pentagon as well, Pete Hegseth has not even done any sort of reporting with these people in 4 months. His press secretary, Kingsley, 2 months. I mean, it seems like we are a media blackout when it comes to the DOD, which raises questions. What is the DOD doing that they don't want us to find out? That's my biggest thing. What are you doing
on top of that, Mia?
Yeah.
On top of that, let's just add another layer, is that they have also fired every single legal expert in their field for each branch of the military. They have completely decimated the military's legal framework that they have, and how the military itself deals with any and all things, whether they're legal or illegal, i.e. the 4 Venezuelan boats that we should never have bombed. Had we had our JAG officer to advise on that, that probably wouldn't have happened. However, now they're cutting out the news, the press. So that tells you already that they're about to do really illegal things, and they don't want anyone to see it.
I mean, you bring it. I feel like that's pretty valid. I mean, I don't want to think the worst of this administration, but the federal government as a whole has never really done great things across the world. And now they're restricting what little access they were giving historically. Now they have restricted that. Obviously, I do not want reporters walking around in secured places, getting hold of documents that are classified or anything like that. You know what I mean? At all. However, we need to caveat that with, we do have freedom of press in the United States. We are protected by the First Amendment, and the Supreme Court has stated the freedom of press, as long as you are not writing slanderous or defamatory things, you can say, you can say what you want to say as long as it's truthful. And it just feels like they're preparing for something that they don't want us to know.
I think this is a pendulum swing back, because if I'm gonna keep it a stack, during 2020, it was a lot of information being suppressed. You know what I mean? It was a lot of, you couldn't say certain things. You know what I mean? I don't want to act like this is one-sided, because during the last administration, I would genuinely talk to people and they knew nothing about Hunter Biden's laptop. Whether it's bullshit or not, they didn't know, because the channels that they were watching never talked about it. There was a total blackout. Then when it came to medical things, everyone knows what I'm talking about. People made decisions based on not even being informed. You couldn't even talk about it. You couldn't even push back on some of that. So I think this is just the pendulum swinging back the other way. Now, the scary thing, though, because this is what happened. Okay, since we're here, it's going to swing back the other way. Now, when it swings back the other way, what does that look like? Because it's going to swing back. So when it swings back the other way, it's going to swing back equally extreme. And what does that look like?
Before Enzo respond, I want to actually play what Pete Hegseth said about this.
The question, because it was interesting to watch. We had a chance to go along on the historic trip of Middle East peace, which our generation of veterans never dreamed would be possible. So you would think that the Pentagon press corps of all press corps would be front and center across the board on wanting to give credit to the president for forging this kind of peace, and instead what they want to talk about is a policy about them, which simply says maybe the policy should look like the White House or other military installations, where you have to wear a badge that identifies that you're press, or you can't just roam anywhere you want. It used to be, Mr. President, the press could go anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the Pentagon, the most classified area in the world. Or also that if they sign on to the credentialing, they're not going to try to get soldiers to break the law by giving them classified information. So it's common sense stuff, Mr. President. We're trying to make sure national security is respected, and we're proud of the policy.
What I'm going to say that's weird about this is that the military, it's a military job where you can be a reporter. So I wonder how they're going to control that. And I know that for a fact, because when I slept in a 60-man bay, he had to sleep right beside me. So I don't know how they're going to control actual military people that are press. But Enzo, what do you think about what Pete Higgs has said?
I'm completely fine with it, to be honest with you. And I'm just going to revert back to the couple news stories that came out earlier this year, how legacy media has been covering Trump and his presidency for the last 10 years, no matter what he does good, in a negative light. That's why Caroline Lovett had certain news outlets restricted from the press room. Yes, you do have freedom of press, but it's still a privilege to report on the president. It's still a privilege to be in the Pentagon reporting on certain things. If they don't want to abide by the rules that's being put forward by the Secretary of War, then so be it. I don't see that as suppression of the press, like we saw, like Ken said, like we saw from 2020 to 2024. Literally, that's still going on right now. I was just on TikTok talking about COVID, reading from documents that were given to us by the House Oversight Committee, and I got flagged for that and got taken down for that. Like there really is no freedom of speech anymore in this country, because if it doesn't fit a narrative, regardless right or left, you're going to get suppressed for it. I would love to see all legacy media get abolished altogether, because they're partisan one way or the other. CNN, NBC, all them left leaning, Fox News, Newsmax, right leaning. I would rather see more independent journalists who do not have a bias, who's not paid by any political party whatsoever to report on the news, because at least you know when they report on it, like how we do here, you have multiple people from multiple sides, independent, Republican, Democrat, who report on things how we see it, how we like to see it, and it's not bias. I like that better, instead of partisan news all day long. It's ridiculous. So maybe this will change something. Maybe this will bring out more independent news journalists and actually bring them into the Pentagon. I don't want to play into the fear mongering and say, well, it's going to be for seedy stuff and they're going to try to get away with stuff. No, I really see this as a revolution in media, because we already know legacy media has been dying over the last couple of years. So maybe this is the start of something new.
That is true. Independent media is growing a lot more, and it may surpass legacy media. So this is Trump going after ABC because he didn't like the way they treated JD Vance.
Your ABC fake news.
Mr. President,
Brian, please.
First of all,
I
congratulations.
don't take questions from ABC fake news. After what you did with Stephanopoulos to the Vice President of the United States, I don't take questions from ABC fake news. Brian, go ahead.
Yes.
Ken, is this appropriate? Should Trump be able to tell news media that he's not going to take questions?
I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I think ride for your peoples. You know what I'm saying? I mean, ride for your peoples. JD was bouncing around questions. That was true. He did get cut off at the end. I'm not a fan of that. Or I could call it both ways. And ride for your peoples. That's if I'm in the cabinet, I feel very comfortable that that the commander in chief is going to speak up for me and stand up for me. So yeah.
Right. And like Enzo was saying, we're fair here, so we're going to talk about people saying that they're happy that Memphis got the federal government National Guard sent there. So